Hello and welcome to episode 166 of Page One, the Writers Podcast. I'm Tarek.
I'm Marco, and thanks for joining us on the podcast where we like to speak to writers of all kinds about their writing careers, find out how they got into the industry and try and get as many hints and tips from them as possible. And we've got a great, I know I say this every week, but we do have a great back catalogue of
They're
guests.
all great. They're all
Yeah,
great.
they are. So if you haven't checked out previous episodes, have a scroll through the names and I'm sure there'll be some that you want to listen to. But we have a great guest this week as well.
Yeah, but this week we're chatting with the wonderful Heidi Swain, who has written an absolute smorgasbord of books dating back to 2015, I believe her first book came out. And since then she's one of these incredible authors who's able to write 2 books a year, a summer book and a Christmas book. We've chatted to a couple like that before in the past, and it's a really interesting setup, I think. And she's had a really interesting route into the industry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and interesting how she gets her first book picked up as well directly by the publisher rather than through an agent. But we chat to her about all of that. I should say that we recorded this back in March. So when we're talking about her book coming out next month, it's actually already out and you can pick that up right now. And we'll put a link in the podcast description, of course. But we'll get straight into the episode now after a quick advert for a writer's notebook, and then we'll be back at the end of the podcast with a bit more chat and to let you know about next week's guest.
But for now, on with the podcast.
The blank page. To some, it's terrifying, an obstacle to overcome. But we prefer to think of it as an opportunity, a blank canvas to be filled with all of the adventures and characters in our head. So how to overcome that fear? Well, we all know the best advice for a writer is write. Seriously, get words on the page and more will follow.
But what about later, when you start trying to pull those threads of what you've written together? What about the character you wrote about way back at the start? Who was she again? What was she carrying? And where did she leave the MacGuffin that she now really needs in the third act? Think about all those top thrillers you like to read, or that amazing drama you just watched. What did they all have in common? Structure and planning.
As aspiring writers ourselves, we've tried many different methods to try and organise all the thoughts about the stories we want to tell. We've been there searching for a piece of scrap paper to note something down, or making a quick note on our phone in between meetings.
Or sometimes we'll make a note in whatever notebook we're carrying, or a document on our laptop so we don't forget that great idea. Let's be honest, it can all be a bit messy and it's easy to lose track of everything. And that's when we realise it's not just the story that needs structure and planning, but the way we gather all of our thoughts about it as well.
And so we made Page One. Page One is more than just another notebook. It's a place to put down all your ideas for your latest project, divided into easy-to-use sections that will help you plan your story, so that when that blank page comes calling, you're ready to answer. And then afterwards, once it's written, we realised you need to plan how to let people read it, so we included a section relating to submissions.
Each one is designed for one project, whether you want to write a book, screenplay, a comic, or any other kind of story. We truly believe that when you use it, it will help you get to the main event, writing your story. So we hope this helps.
We can't wait to read what you come up with.
And remember, every story starts with page one.
Did you always want to be a writer?
Yes. There you go. Short,
Okay, there you go. That's it.
Yes.
That's podcast.
like
No,
that.
I did. I always wanted to. I always wanted to tell stories. It took me forever to start doing it, but it was something that I knew I wanted to do from a very young age.
And I think I'm right in saying that you bought lots of notebooks in pursuit of that goal, but never actually filled them up.
You've been reading up. I've got a bookcase behind me that you can probably see here, and another one across this side. And yes, I used to spend all my pocket money on notebooks, again, from a really young age. And I would open them. Sometimes I would put my name on the first page. And that was as far as it got. The thought of spoiling these beautiful, clean pages with words that would end up being wrong. Yeah, I couldn't do it. So yes, huge collection of notebooks, but I've got better at that now. I'm embracing the mistakes, which is, I think it's a big leap to make, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. You have to accept that the first thing that you're writing isn't going to be
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And once you get over that, well, I'm not going to say it becomes easier, because actually I think it gets harder, but you can kind of do it. You can get on with it at that point.
Yeah. You kind of have that image in your head of what it's going to be, and that there's a kind of certain fear almost of anything you put down will not be anywhere close to what that is, and you'll never get to that point. And what's the point?
Absolutely, yeah, that's it exactly. Because when it's in your head, it's not tangible, is it? It's not the best story you've not tried to create it, so it's in that perfect bubble. But then when you actually start to write it, it becomes a different beast. And you always end up with something completely different to where or I do. I always end up somewhere completely different to where I started. So
yeah. And so what was it that got you over that initial hurdle and actually started you writing?
To take my writing seriously, it was the marching on of time. You look in the mirror and you do realise, as Dolly Parton says, that it's marching across your face. And if you don't do something about it soon, you're never gonna make it. Yeah. So I had 3 years at university, got a degree in literature. I worked on a newspaper for a year. So I was always messing about with other people's words, but never actually having the confidence to write my own. And then I had a blog for my hens, for my rescue chickens, and I had a monthly column in a local parish magazine. And it was words, but it wasn't fulfilling me. Mm-hmm. And I thought I really need to have a go at this. So I started writing short stories, because I thought that would be the easier way in. But anybody who's written short stories knows just how difficult that limited word count is. Yeah. And then I took a couple of creative writing courses in Norwich, and I thought, right, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to see if I can write 100,000 words and not stress over it too much. Nobody else is going to see this. It's going to end up in the box file under the bed. So just go for it. But it was age. It was age that made me think, if I don't have a go at this soon, I'm going to miss the boat, which I don't think is necessarily true at all. I think you actually if you're going to make the leap, you make it when you're ready to do it, irrespective of how.
Yeah.
But for me,
I think that's a good attitude. That kind of, even if you write something that's 100,000 words of absolute crap, nobody is going to read them if you don't want them to. So, and it's all practice, and it's that kind of it's the idea of nobody is amazing at something the first time they try it. So it's
exactly.
Why would writing be any different? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was the expectation that I'd had. The first thing that I had to do had to be brilliant, otherwise I couldn't do it.
Yeah. And
now I know, if I went back and read my first novel and I reread my 17th novel, if I couldn't see a difference between them, if I didn't think I was improving, what's the point? We never stop learning. Yeah. Totally. So that's a tough one to take, though, because you obviously want to be amazing at it from the start, because it's your dream. It's what you've wanted to do since you've been able to literally string a sentence together.
Yeah. And did doing the courses that you did it sort of help to be in a group that are all, everyone's sort of putting themselves out there in terms of the writing and things like that? So does that help as well get over the fears?
It was a mixed thing, really. There are some amazing writers in that group, and that can be quite intimidating because you're comparing what you've written to what they've written. There was a lot of sharing, a lot of critiquing that went on. So that was a really steep learning curve. But again, you are all there for the same reason, because you want to make marks on the page and tell a story. Mm-hmm. So it was. I wouldn't say it was a completely comfortable experience, but I do feel that it was an important one. It was nice to have that sort of community. And I uploaded the short stories that I wrote to an online page called Shortbread Stories. I don't know if it exists anymore, but that was a wonderful online community. And we all used to comment on each other's stories and things. And that was interesting. That was great.
And then what was the point where you thought, actually, I want to make this leap now to full length? What was that something you'd always wanted to try, the full length, or was the short stories more like a stepping stone to that point for you?
No, that was always the end goal. I think it was doing the shopping every week with the kids in the trolley and going around that book aisle and seeing names of authors who I respected and seeing the books there that I loved. I thought, God, that's what I want. I want to see my books on the shelf of a supermarket and in a library and in an indie bookshop, and that was always the main goal. And I think once I had made that decision that I was going to make it happen, I had crossed through that big thing. That's because this is one of my big things. People always say, I'm going to do that when I've got more time. Come back to me then in 10 years' time and tell me when you magically found that time. Because, that's probably the biggest barrier for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I haven't got time to do it. You will never have time to do it. You have to make the time and ring fence the time. Yeah. And that was at that point, I thought, I need to protect the time that I've got and just get on with it.
And that first... Well, I don't know, was that novel the first one you worked on? Did that become Cherry Tree Cafe, or was that something else?
No, it was something else. So it was the very first book I wrote was called When the Country Calls. Okay. And it was predominantly set in Wynbridge, which became my first series. And as I say, it was just to see if I could do 100,000 words. Could I hit that word count? Yeah. And then, I put that one to bed, and then I had to go with the Cherry Tree Cafe, which I thought would probably be more marketable. But that first book didn't go to waste, because a lot of the setting, some of the characters and a bit of the plot, that became Summer at Skylark Farm, which was my second novel. So everything you write can be used in some way, even if it's only dragging out one character or one tiny plot point. Everything is of value. So it didn't become my debut, but a lot of it is in the second book.
I would say, so the book that you wrote but then didn't take on anywhere, what was the difference between that, in your mind, between that book and the Cherry Tree Cafe? What was it about that first book that you thought wasn't suitable?
I think I just didn't feel confident enough to put it out there, because it was a first try.
Okay.
I honestly don't know how you would think about it. If you compared the two, I don't know how they would stand up to each other. But we have to, I think we've got to have faith in what we're going to submit if we're going to make that leap and do it. And I felt that I loved the story of the Cherry Tree Cafe, and I felt that would be the one that I could possibly do something with. And that was the book that I submitted to the RNA New Writers Scheme. So you have a published author critique the book, and the notes that came back were really positive, suggested quite a few changes, which I did instigate. I got all these changes made before it went out on submission. And then it was, I don't know, a fate, I suppose, that S&S had their Books in the City one day open call for submissions, and that was when the book went in. The timing was perfect. The book had just been finished. They had their open day, and off it went. And a few weeks later, I got that magical email back that said, "We'd like to invite you to London to talk about the book."
It's funny because so many authors that we've had on are, they all talk about the importance of timing and the sort of luck of timing, just being the right some opportunity or some person they've met or something coming along just at the right time. But I suppose as well, it is that, but it's also the fact that you've been putting in the work beforehand, and it's all just come together at the right time, I guess. But there's a bit more than just sheer luck of timing involved there. I mean, with that one, it was an open call by a publisher. Had you sent it out more widely to agents and stuff like that?
No, it was the only place it went. And so I was thrilled I think I was just kind of like dipping my toe in the water. I thought, right, if I do one thing at a time, it's still a big leap, but it doesn't feel like a huge leap. I hadn't even tried for an agent at that point. It was just purely that this opportunity came along. It could be an unsolicited manuscript. They wanted the first 3 chapters, and off it went. But you're right about the whole work thing. It is the harder I work, the luckier I get, because you see those opportunities come along and you've got the work done, so you can take advantage of them and get submitting.
And obviously you have an agent now, and so my understanding is that you got the deal for the publishing deal first, and then you got the agent second. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I had signed. I think I just signed my 3rd contract when I thought, right, I'm going to start submitting, trying to find an agent. I had been getting on really well. I mean, S&S are a green publisher. I'm so lucky with the team that I've got. Most of the people I'm working with now, I was working with right from the beginning. But it was a couple of authors. We had a lovely publishing night down in London, a big party, and a couple of them said to me, well, you're still not working with an agent. And I said, well, no, everything's going well. Sales are fantastic. Money's going in the right direction. Everything's good. And they said, yeah, but if publishers do like to work through an agent. And if you can find an agent, you will kind of see what more they can do for you, because obviously they have got the knowledge. They know, if all of your rights are being used up. And, at that point, I hadn't got any books in audio. So I thought, right, I'm going to look for an agent and see who I feel that I would want to work with and who possibly might want to work with me. And then I went through the slush pile. I submitted through the slush pile. I didn't take a recommendation or anything, because I thought, I can't. I'm not so arrogant that I'm just going to phone you up and say, right, do you want to represent me? So I submitted to Amanda Preston at LBA. Didn't hear anything for quite a while, and then she happened to be talking to my then editor, Emma Capron, and said, "Oh, I've got an author who's looking for representation." And Amanda said, "Oh, I think I've seen her sitting in my lengthy, pile of unopened emails." And yeah, so she opened it up, had a read, looked at the figures, and invited me down to London and decided to represent me that day, which was amazing.
I mean, it's you would think that, when you're in your position, for example, that has had successful books out at that point, it would be a bit of a no-brainer for an agent at that point to say, yeah, okay, because the risk for them is much less than it is with someone completely untasted, I suppose, in the publishing market.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. I'd already got a really good track record at that point, but that still didn't give me personally the confidence to go and just say, can I come down and have a chat? But thankfully she was keen to represent me, and we've got a fantastic relationship, and she's friends with my editor, and it works wonderfully well.
And what is it that she does bring to the table then, as having an agent as opposed to not before?
So I mean, more often than not, I still work directly with the publisher. Obviously, she has got so much more knowledge than I have when it comes to renewing contracts. Like she flagged up really quickly that we weren't doing anything with the audio rights, and straight away all the books went to audio. So she's got that knowledge. That's what you're kind of paying her for. She's a fantastic sounding board. If I've got any little concerns about a book, I know I can go to her, even though I can go straight to my editor. More often than not, this is a whole big group email. We're all chatting together. But yeah, she's just great to have there as that kind of that go-between. And I get so many offers to read proofs now, which are amazing, but you can't possibly take them all.
Yeah.
As much as you'd like to. And I'm really rubbish at saying no. I would say yes to everything if I could. But, she is aware that with my writing schedule, 2 books a year is pretty full on. So she is the person who can go back and explain that. And that kind of lessens my guilt, because I don't like to have anybody down. So, she's just amazing for so many things. And, I love having her in my corner. She's brilliant. She's a huge help. And basically, I suppose at the most basic level, she lets me get on with writing the books, and that's what I need to do.
Well, you mentioned there what I was about to ask you, which is that you put out 2 books a year, which is a crazy amount of books. It's a really impressive number, and it must be. Well, we'll ask about how you find that, because I know for some people writing 1 book every 2 years is quite hard. But how do you find the time for that? What's your process in being able to put out a book every 6 months?
Well, I haven't had a holiday since 2016, so that kind of gives you some idea of how it's going. But I think it's just a routine that I have got into now. The first 3 books, I've got to look at the shelf now. The first 3 books came out, and I think we were 1 a year. And after that, the publisher said, we really like you putting out a Christmas book, and it did so wonderfully well, and we would like that to be a regular thing. Can you do it? And at the time, the children were still reasonably young, and I was working as a teaching assistant for children with special needs, which was a demanding job, and I could manage the 1 a year doing all of that, but not the 2 a year. So that was the point that I decided I have to go full time. So that was a big leap. And I guess I have got into that routine, and you've always got 3 books in your head. So you've got the book that you are about to publish. You've got the book that you're working on at the moment, and deadline day, first draft submission day, always falls around the same time as publication day. And then you are thinking where you're going next. And I tell you what can be quite tricky when you've got a book coming out and you are already finishing writing the next book, and you've got to get your head back into the book that's being published, because you know all about it, but nobody else does. So you have to go back and, refresh your mind. That's not been as tricky this time, because The Book Lovers, which comes out in April, is my first standalone.
Yeah.
And so that has got a very different place in my head, and it's got a completely different feel to it. So it is just a constant kind of ongoing process where you just got three in your head all at once. And at the moment, when I'm writing the first draft, I will, I'm at my desk by 6:30 in the morning, and then I will just write until I can't write anymore. And then get on with the admin, recording podcasts, writing newsletters, and doing all that sort of thing in the afternoon.
And with the Christmas books in particular, I mean, how do you keep coming up with ideas for that? Is it just, are you able to take an idea that you have and just say, right, I'm going to set this one at Christmas? Or do you have to think specifically, right, how do I make this one particularly Christmassy?
I have Christmas in my head first, because I was so excited when I was asked to write my first Christmas book, because everybody's writing Christmas books now, but at the time there weren't that many. There weren't that many Christmas books, and I thought, right, I want to get this right. I feel as if there's a heavy weight of reader responsibility if somebody's picking up a book with Christmas in the title. And when I ask readers and friends and family, what do you expect from this book? And they said, we want it to say Christmas. And, sometimes you pick up a book that's got Christmas in the title and Christmas barely gets a look in. So for me, if it's got Christmas in the title, it has got to have a lot of Christmas stuff in it. And setting some of them in Wynbridge, which is a small town with a very well-established kind of Christmas setup. You've got the lights going on, you've got a bake sale, you've got a Christmas tree auction, you've got all those things happening. And that kind of makes it easier to incorporate the story of the character that you're writing about around all of those things. The only Christmas book that I've put out that didn't have Christmas in the title was The Winter Garden, and there was a lot about SAD in that one. And we had the Winterfest, which wasn't a Christmas fest, it was Winterfest, and it was, developing strategies of how people can cope with winter, because not everybody enjoys the short, dark days. It's been my first winter on my own this year, and I know I found it a very different experience. So I was adamant that we wouldn't have Christmas in that title, even though there's Christmas in the book, but it was more about, the actual winter garden than Christmas. So I have completely lost the thread of what you asked me about.
No, it was just about getting these different ideas for Christmas set books as opposed to other stories, I guess. But yeah, you sort of start with Christmas in your head and then think, right, what idea could I develop here?
Yeah,
and I wondered, because you've obviously got a very loyal following of people who must now find you as a regular fixture. Your Christmas book is something I look forward to, and I've seen comments from fans online who say things like, "Oh, it's not Christmas until I read one of our books," etc. And so does that? And I kind of wondered, how does that put you in the mindset of sitting down to actually write it and plan it? Because do you think there's tropes that I need to put in there that people expect, and is that restrictive, or is that quite nice to have that comfort?
Well, firstly, it's a huge privilege when people say things like that. I mean, when I was looking back, going around Tesco's with the kids in the trolley, looking at those shelves, that was what I was trying to reach. So for people message me. I think they message me more after the Christmas books come out than at any other time of year, and there's often something in there that they can relate to. I had a lady who messaged me years ago when Sleigh Rides came out, and said that she had been widowed at Christmas and she hadn't put her decorations up since. But having journeyed with the main character through that book and seeing how she fell back in love with Christmas, she had gone into the loft that year and she'd got her decorations down and she put them up. And it was such a moving experience. And, the joys of social media, I've been able to stay in touch with that lovely reader ever since, which is amazing. So I do feel as if there are certain things that I need to get in there, because it is Christmas, and there are, if you're not wrapping presents and putting up a tree, it's not it's not a Christmas book. So there are always things that I feel need to go in there. And the three different series, even though we've only got two set at Wynmouth, which is the seaside, we had the Christmas tree plantation there, which was such fun to write. But I do feel that each of the settings have different traditions and things that they do at Christmas time. So it's that's quite handy to peg parts of the story onto that. So yeah.
And what about the actual, because these books are coming out at Christmas, they're very Christmassy for the readers, but when are you writing them? What's your sort of schedule? When do these ones have to be written so that they're published by
a lot of people say to me, do you find it difficult writing summer at Christmas, and do you find it difficult writing Christmas at summer? But I don't really think about it like that. I did used to keep a jar of mincemeat in the fridge for editing time, because we would be getting into the summer then, Michael Bublé on Spotify, jar of mincemeat in the fridge. But I think now I'm just so used to it. I don't take any notice if it's 40 degrees and I'm doing proof pages for Christmas. In fact, if anything, it's a respite from the wretched heat. But I so at the moment, I'm writing the first draft of Christmas 23, and I started that in January. So even though I'm not writing it at Christmas, I still got Christmas in my head because we've just had it. And that's the same with the summer one as well. The way it the starting of it and getting those first words down, they tend to happen really close to the right season. So I guess that is a bit of a help. But of course, by the time it comes to finishing, we are completely out of season, and you just got to go with it. Jingle bells in July, I don't know, whatever.
And what's your process? I think I read online that you write your first draft longhand. Is that correct?
I used to write longhand. So when I was working, I would get up at 5 and write longhand for an hour before the kids got up. Wow. Then I would sit in my car during my lunch hour and carry on in that scrappy A4, not a nice notebook, I hasten to add. This was A4, like files from the supermarket.
Yeah.
And I would sit in my car and write for an hour. And sometimes it would be boiling hot, and sometimes it would be freezing cold, and the kids were on the playground in front of me, shaking on the fence, saying, Mrs. Swain, I see you in your car. Oh, goodness me. And then in the evening, I would type up what I had written during the day. Now I don't tend to do that. I am straight onto the screen. I love writing longhand, though, because your brain has longer to process, doesn't it? There's definitely less editing. Yeah. So I like it, but I don't really do it anymore unless I'm out and feeling inspired. Then I will, get some notes down. But it's mostly me in front of the screen now, straight onto a Word document.
I like the idea of writing longhand, but I think going back to what we were talking about at the start, it seems more prohibitive to me because you're less, it's although it's as easy as stroking it out with a pen, but it kind of, you don't want to make so many mistakes because otherwise the page
takes longer to correct them. Yeah.
Whereas if it's on a word processor, you can just hit select, delete, and it's gone, and you can start writing again. Kind of thing.
Yeah, that's very true. I think Jill Mansell still writes every one of her manuscripts longhand, all of them.
Wow.
And then her daughter types them up because I think she's the only person who can interpret her handwriting. And she writes with these beautiful fountain pens in like purple ink, and I'm probably on a chaise longue, I would imagine. But no, that's not for me.
Eating grapes. Yeah.
And I imagine as well that you plan these out, or are you a pantser?
No, I'm a planner. I'm a planner. I am a list maker. I add things to my phone schedule every day, even if I've already done them, just so I can tick them off. I'm one of those people. And also, I haven't got time to be a pantser. Because I've got not long to get that book written, so I need to know where it's going before I start. So I have a plan. I send off sort of 2 or 3 A4 sheets to my agent and my editor for them to have a look through. Then we'll have a chat, much as we are now, to go through that, and they'll flag up anything they're not happy with or things that they really are happy with. And then I'm head down, and I will just keep writing that first, keep working at that first draft until it's done. I think the quickest I've written in a first draft was about 9.5, 10 weeks.
Right. Wow. That's fast.
That was Monday to Friday. Just keep going for as long as I can. I never finish my writing day without knowing what I'm going to write the next day. So if I finish a chapter, I will bring up the next chapter heading and like write the first paragraph, and then during the afternoon I'm thinking about how that's going to go, which just that really speeds it up. I couldn't sit down and think, right, what am I going to write today? I can't.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
I've heard of authors who like stop in the middle of a sentence for that, for
Yeah.
the same sort of reason. That
Yeah.
they know at least they'll be able to complete the sentence when they sit down the next day.
Exactly. And I think by
Yeah.
the time you finish that sentence, you're back in the zone, aren't you? And it's that
Yeah.
much easier to keep going. But I never, even though I've got the plan, my editor will probably laugh when she listens to this, because you're like, yeah, but what you give me doesn't always add up to the plan, does it? No, it doesn't, because I don't, there's only so much you can plan, because until you have written 30,000-40,000 words, that's the point when you're really getting to know those characters. And that's, and I quite often get to 30 or 40,000 words and think, I've now got to go back and change stuff at the beginning, because this is not the behavior of the person who we had at the start. So I think you have to be, if you have a plan, you still have to be flexible and allow for those changes and that character development, because as I say, until you start putting them on the screen, you don't really know who's rocking out and you're working with.
And you break your books up into series, and you've got 3 series there. But as you mentioned earlier on, you've got your first standalone book, which is out next month.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's about and why you decided to go down the standalone path?
Oh, I'm so excited about this book. So it's called The Book Lover's Retreat. And last year was a huge year for me. I moved house. I had a first draft submission deadline, and I turned 50 all on the same day. It was huge. It was monumental. And I felt up for anything last year. So when my editor came to me and said, how do you fancy having a crack at a standalone? I was like, yeah, bring it on. We'll give it a go.
Okay.
Time for a change, time to mix it up a bit. And then my daughter and I were binge watching Sex Education on Netflix. And there is a house on there which I just absolutely with. And my daughter said,
Is it the main house?
yeah, you know the one.
Yes,
it's gorgeous.
It's quite a house.
It's beautiful.
I just had to say, I don't know, it's meant to be England somewhere.
I think
but
it's
I've never quite seen it.
I think in Wales.
Oh, is it in Wales? Right.
If
okay.
memory serves, because my
Yeah, it's quite
daughter
a
said
house.
to me, oh my God, you keep going on about this house. She said, you can rent it. She said, but it's really expensive and it's booked up for the next couple of years. And I was like, no.
Oh,
So
wow.
on with the search engine, had a look, and she was right. It was very expensive and it was booked up. But that idea of being able to visit somewhere that had either featured in a book or had been used in a film or TV series, that was the hook for me. That was what just stuck in my head. And I thought, oh, well, who could go? Who could go? Who could go and stay there? And if you're going, you might as well go for the whole summer. Make a really big thing of it. And that was how it happened. And we've got Emily, the main character, and her friends Rachel and Tori, and they have booked this lakeside cottage in the Lake District, which was a setting I hadn't written about before. And they go, or they're supposed to go. There's a twist at the beginning, which might mean that they don't all end up going. And they go there for 6 weeks. They spend the summer there, and they've got a lot of stuff to work through. And it was really nice to be able to not just tell their story, but to keep referring back to the book that they had all fallen in love with. And then the cottage at Lakeside was the actual place where the film of the book was set. So, you can pull in all those extra bits as well. And it felt very indulgent. I always write about things I love. I often give my main characters skills that I wish I had. And they've always got a dog that I wish I had. I've gone from a chihuahua to a wolfhound in these books. So, yeah, it felt very self-indulgent because, who wouldn't want to go and spend 6 weeks in a cottage by the lakes, really?
Oh, yeah, it'd be awesome.
Oh, it was the most wonderful book to write. I've loved it.
Was it nice, though, working on because you've got these 3 different series. Like, how does your headspace work in terms of jumping between them? And was it nice to work in a completely new sort of environment?
It was wonderful. It felt very freeing because everything was completely new. And it's been a long time. I mean, the Cherry Tree Cafe was originally supposed to be a standalone. We didn't know how popular it was going to be and that I would set the same book in the similar area. So this was all completely new, completely fresh. And I think maybe that was why I wrote that first draft so quickly, because I wasn't having to think, I need to make a visit here. I need to bring this character in from another book. Because the readers love seeing characters come back in and getting to know what's happened to them since they had their story told. So yeah, writing this was just it did feel very, very freeing. I really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping, if it goes down well, fingers crossed, NetGalley so far doing its business. If it goes down well, then going forward, I will hopefully write one standalone book a year and a series book a year. How that will be divided up between Christmas and summer at the moment, we don't know, but that's kind of the plan at the moment.
I was going to say, you're not adding like a standalone, a third book
every 4 months.
Yeah, exactly.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
And so what have you got? This is as we record this, Book Lovers Retreat is out next month.
Yeah.
You're working on the Christmas book. What else is in the pipeline?
So Christmas book goes in, I think deadline for that is April the 6th. Book Lover comes out April the 13th, and then I will start to turn my attention to where we go next. So the next book will be a summer book. Really hard to plan in too much detail at the moment because I don't know how the Book Lovers is going to go down. So am I going to be writing a standalone, or am I going to want to write a series book so that I can have a Christmas standalone? So it's all a bit up in the air at the moment. I have got an idea for the next summer standalone, but when that will fall into the schedule, I'm not sure. I'm kind of being careful at the moment, trying to keep my head in this Christmas book. Had a lot go on over the last few weeks with the RNA Awards ceremony and all the excitement of that. So I'm trying to keep my focus really on Christmas 23 at the moment. But there, as I say, there is this initial spark of an idea for a summer standalone, which I guess potentially could turn into a series book. But I think the idea that I've got is big enough to work as a standalone. So we will see. I will be filling my agent in, after deadline day and seeing what she thinks of that one.
And do you have like one of your many notebooks? Does that have like any ideas for potential future stories?
Yeah, I have I have what I call a busy book. Like when you have it in, year one or kindergarten, you have a busy book that you can make a mess of. And I do just write at random ideas down there. And I also have like a note section on my phone. And if I tend to write down, if I've had an idea inspired by perhaps a tweet I've read or a post I've seen on Instagram, I write down the idea that I've had, but I also write down what inspired it, where that initial idea came from, because it's so easy to forget. Once you've ended up with the whole book, you kind of think, how did this start? And you might not necessarily remember. So it's good to have the busy book.
Excellent.
Now you mentioned it just there, but I was going to ask you about the award you won from the Romantic Novelists Association for a Christmas celebration, which came out in December last year.
That's it, yeah.
And has obviously been a very big success. I mean, how did it feel to win that award?
Oh, it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I think my first goal was, after I'd got published, I wanted to make the Sunday Times list. Got that, and it's like, what's next? Where do we go next? So it was winning an RNA award. That was, the validation from your peers. That was the kind of the next thing on the list. And I had 2 books nominated before, hadn't won. Disappointing. You never want to say it's disappointing because you're always pleased for the person who has won, but actually,
really,
you are gutted. You are gutted. You wanted that trophy on the shelf. It's right on the shelf behind me. I'm glad. I'm glad it's in shot. You see the star there. But I got the email to say that I had won because the Popular Romantic Fiction Award, the winner is always announced prior to the awards ceremony. I'm not sure why that is, but that's the one that's announced. Everybody else has the list of nominees are announced, but not the overall winner until the night. So I got this email I think it's about the 3rd week of December. I read it and I printed it out and I read it again. And I was like, yeah, this is really telling me that I have won this award. And I cried a lot. And I'm not a crier. I have been accused of being hard-hearted in the past, but we won't go into that. I'm not generally someone who sheds a tear very easily, but this just meant so much. But I was sworn to secrecy. The email said you're not allowed to tell anybody until the announcements are made on the 31st of January. And I'm like, oh my God, that's 6 months. How am I going to keep this quiet?
That's such a long time.
It is a really long time. And also I had this knowledge and I wasn't allowed to share it with anybody. And on the day that the announcement was made, on the 31st of January, my agent, Amanda, she emailed me. She was like, "This is amazing. Congratulations. But why the heck didn't you tell me? Why didn't you fill me in?" And my editor was saying the same thing. And I was like, the email said we weren't allowed to tell anyone, and I didn't want to jinx it. I was really scared they'd take it away if I was wrong.
Didn't even tell your agent?
No, I didn't tell anyone.
Oh, fair play.
But going forward, I'm just getting hot just at the thought of it, because she was like, "I cannot believe you didn't tell me." So yeah, I didn't tell anyone. I just sat on it for the few weeks, and I was getting kind of more and more G'd up, because I knew I was going to have to make a speech. And I knew that Doctor Who, Peter Davison, was going to be giving me that trophy on the night, wow. And it was but it was amazing. It was a phenomenal night. The lists this year, the nominations this year were just incredible. It was an amazing year for romantic fiction last year. So and it was great to all get together and celebrate that. It was amazing.
Brilliant.
I'm excited about it. As you can probably tell, I've probably just bust the volume on your speaker.
You should be,
Oh, absolutely well earned. Yeah, totally.
Winning an award is, as you say, you've got these goals in your head when you're starting to write, and
so it was
achieve them. It's amazing, phenomenal
to achieve that. And that award is voted for by like librarians and book bloggers, and just to kind of to win that, it was incredible. It made me actually think I might know what I'm doing.
What was the last book that you read?
Last book that I read was The Wedding Dress Repair Shop by Trisha Ashley. There's a proof of the book that she is releasing in June. I am probably the world's biggest Trisha Ashley superfan. I love her work. I've loved her work for years. So now to be asked to read a proof and to be asked for a quote for the cover is immense. So that was the last book I read, and I absolutely loved it. The last book that I read that wasn't a proof was My Extraordinary Life by Rebecca Ryan, which was a debut, and that was phenomenal. I devoured it in about 2 days. I don't have a lot of time to read, so you know how much I loved it if I devoured something in 2 days. That was gorgeous. So that is out at the moment. The Trisha book is coming out in June, in hardback and ebook first, I think.
Brilliant.
Nice. And what about the last film that you watched?
Oh, the last film I watched. Oh, funnily enough, it was Avatar. It was the first one. My daughter is absolutely obsessed with Avatar at the moment, and she was heading off with her dad to the cinema yesterday to see it for, I believe it was either the 5th or the 6th time. She's seen it in like 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D, where they're chucking the water at you.
4.5 hours long as well, so that's about a week and a half.
I know, that's a big deal. But so that was the last film I watched. It was Avatar. Watched it at home on the TV and loved it as much as I did the first time.
Great.
Nice.
And TV series that you're watching or have watched?
TV series. So I've been rewatching Downton Abbey. I came to Downton Abbey actually really, really late. Didn't watch it at all when it was being aired live, as it were. And my mum was a huge fan of it, and I just felt as if because I'd missed like the first 17 seasons, I didn't feel as if I was ever going to be able to catch up. And then COVID struck, and we had those crazy summers of lockdown, and that was it for me. I just sat and watched the whole thing. And I tend to watch things that I have already seen before when I'm writing, because it's there and it's lovely, and I've got to think about it too much.
Yeah,
I've got to process anything new. So Downton. But I'm also watching The Ghost Files with Shane and Ryan on YouTube, which is they were a BuzzFeed thing. They're not a BuzzFeed thing anymore, but they're great fun. So I've been watching that as well.
Great.
An eclectic mix.
It sounds like Avatar, Downton Abbey, BuzzFeed. The very last thing we do is a super quick fire either or, and I always say there's no right answer here apart from one perhaps, but we'll start off with Katie Ford or Jojo Moyes.
Oh, Katie Ford.
TV or cinema?
TV.
Night Owl or Early Bird?
Oh, definitely Early Bird.
Music or no music when you're writing?
No music. The only thing I like to have is the tingling of the tinnitus in my ears.
And the last one, audiobook or ebook?
ebook.
That's the correct
Oh,
answer.
good.
What would you have said? What would you have said if he had said real book or ebook?
See, now I find that really tricky because I do like to read ebook at bedtime, and bedtime is the time I predominantly read. And I have got an ebook bean bag, and you just have your e-reader on the bean
nice. You
bag.
can have sit it on that.
It's just one finger, guys. You just got to swipe, and there's no danger of getting whacked.
Preaching to the converted here. I am big. Big fan. But honestly, we're a dying breed.
Yeah, no, we ask
Tarek breed,
all our guests about this, and very few actually say ebook, much to his disappointment. So
okay, if I'm reading in the day, it's mostly proofs are generally ebook because I can't bear the thought of throwing that beautiful book away, but I can't keep them all because it would be a fire hazard. But generally, if I'm reading during the day, I might have a non-fiction book on the go during the day as well, and that's generally that paper. We're paper book, yeah.
Well, thanks very much to Heidi for coming on there. And, I mentioned it at the start, but there's so many writers that we have on this on this podcast, don't go through the conventional route. Don't go through that 3 chapters and a synopsis through a slush pile and get picked up. Approaching a publisher directly, getting picked up that way and then getting the agent after. It does just show you that there are so many routes into the industry, despite if you looked it up on the internet, you would be told one way of doing it only.
Yeah. I think it's very easy to kind of get sidetracked into that thinking of, you've got to go down the standard route of application. There's no other way of doing that. And this fear of, like, if you veer off that course at all, you'll get just chucked into the slush pile or the bin and no one will consider you because you didn't follow the rules. And really, there are no rules. Yeah, if you're going to go via an agent's application process, you have to follow whatever they say the rules are for their specific application. Fine, but in the broader picture, I think there's no right or wrong way of doing it. Going down an agent pathway is one way. There's other ways of doing it. There's competitions. There's going direct to publishers. There's putting
self-publishing.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. And I think that's something I've really enjoyed hearing all our guests talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said at the start, Heidi's book is now out, so you can pick that one up. And obviously, there will be the Christmas book coming out later in the year. We'll put up a link to all of her books in the podcast description. But next week, we are staying on the theme of romance.
Ooh.
Summer flings, I guess.
That's right. We are chatting with Veronica Henry, who has written, again, an absolute incredible number of books. She has written for The Archers. That was her kind of first route into the industry. She moved into TV writing, and then she's kind of worked her way into the world of books now. So it's a really interesting chat with her, a really interesting journey that she's been on.
So please do tune in for that one. But if you enjoyed today's episode, please do take the time to give us a rating and review on your favourite podcast app. That always helps us. And I'm looking forward to this next bit because we now have 2 new social media accounts, Tarek, to include in your little call out here.
Practice this. Right, okay, here we go. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can send us an email, which is podcast@rightgear.co.uk, or you can send us a tweet in the Twitter machine, which is @UKPage1, or you can follow us on Mastodon, which is writing.exchange/@page1pod, or you can find us on YouTube, where we are youtube.com/@page1podcast, or we're on Blue Sky.
We are on Blue Sky, and we're here. I'll make it easy for you, and actually easier for listeners. We're at UK Page 1 on Threads, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, on Facebook. On most things, we're at UK Page 1. It's just Mastodon and YouTube where we're slightly different there.
Nice. Okay.
That's the way to think about it.
That's how to think of it. I've been going this the wrong way. There's an easier system here at UK Page 1 for pretty much everything.
Yeah, right. And you'll find us there. So please do drop us a message. I don't know what they call the equivalent of a tweet on Threads.
Are we on Threads yet, Marco?
Or on Blue Sky. Yeah, we're on Threads and on Blue Sky.
Okay, that's good. So, for the love of God, people, please send us a message. Marco's spent most of his life running and monitoring 12 social media accounts now.
Please don't, to be honest. I'm quite happy when I'm not on social media. But yeah, have a great week, and we will speak to you again next episode.
See you later.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please leave a comment down below, hit that thumbs up button, and be sure to hit that subscribe button as well, so you never miss an episode like these ones below.
And if you want to get in touch, you can always drop us a tweet in the Twitter machine, which is at UK Page 1, as evidenced here, and our other social media channels are available.
Otherwise, we hope to see you next episode.
See you later.